Are you bringing your Black Templars list to your local game store and not having the success you'd like? Are you getting a little bit frustrated and not knowing where to start? In today's video, I'm going to go over some list building philosophies that will help you understand what a competitive list looks like for Black Templars. First off, I'd like to address the elephant in the room. A great many competitive players out there are writing off the Black Templars as one of the weakest Space Marine chapters out there. And my response is an emphatic disagreement. What makes a force good in 9th edition? Well, it's a few things. Mobility, durability, and the ability to kill your opponent. Of the three, the former two are the most important. Mobility allows you to cross the chasm of space on the board to get to your objectives and table quarters. Objectives are king now in 9th edition, and getting to them is going to be your first priority. Being durable enough to stay on those objectives and weathering your opponent's incoming firepower in combat is also almost as important. It does you no good. To get to an objective, you're just going to be shot off it right away, right? And finally, you have to be able to remove those threats from your opponent's list and get those enemy units off objectives so they can't score points. So why is all this important? The Black Templars have all of those traits in spades. So I'm going to go over them. Our chapter tactic provides mobility in the form of re-rolling advances and charges. In a game of inches, these re-rolls can mean the difference between getting to an objective or not. It can allow you to make all that important charge into your opponent's units. Add in the Black Templars Warlord trait Frontline Commander and the Chaplain Litany Canticle of Hate, and we can get there even more reliably. But what really makes the Black Templars unique in the mobility department is the stratagems Devout Push and Emperor's Will. These allow us additional movement and potentially into combat when we would not normally be able to. That is huge. In the case of Devout Push, we can really pull off some nasty tricks. Our chapter tactics also provides us a form of durability in the form of a 5++ feel no pain from mortal wounds. There are a plethora of sources of mortal wounds out there, and this is going to eliminate 1/3 of them. You will see this come into play most often against Zerker armies, or in some cases from shooting like the Admech. You also have the standard fare apothecary that most of us are going to be taking with the selfless healer, and if you combine that with the Crusader helm, you have a highly durable force. Space Marines also have a ton of durable units available to them that are available to all Space Marines. But when you take them in numerous amounts, you can also take Storm Shields with them. These are key to making sure that you can stay on the board long enough to do what you need to do. Finally, the Black Templars have the Super Doctrine Knights of Sigismund that gives you marginal damage bonus to our close combat attacks when we are in the Assault Doctrine. With the Crusader Helm and the Space Marine Stratagem Adaptive Strategy, we can access the Assault Doctrine early, which is not a common trait across the board. While it's not going to knock your socks off with its strike, we don't really need it to. The units that are most effective for us to use utilize weaponry that is sufficiently powerful to kill whatever we need. It's really just kind of a little bit bonus for us. But in this way, the Black Templars are hitting the most important 3 tenets of list building. So with that out of the way, let's get into the nuts and bolts, shall we? First, we need to talk about the styles of lists that are most effective for us right now. There's really 2 or 3 types of lists that are making impacts on the current meta. The first one features tons of highly mobile, durable, and usually dangerous troops to capture objectives. This flood of objective-secure troops is hard to deal with in combination with their supporting elements. The easiest example to show is the Frozen Spite Harlequins and their troops armed with fusion pistols and riding in Star Reavers. The Star Reavers themselves are pretty tough to kill, but are insanely mobile and put out tons of firepower between the troops and the transport themselves. Our second type of list is centered on a bunch of Death Star units. Often these units are in overlapping auras from characters to give them the buffs they need to be effective. Sometimes feature troops, but are often more aggressive in nature, so they rely more on beating their opponents with a ton of nasty units. Then we have the standard balanced army list strategy. This list works by doing good amounts of damage to your opponent's forces in the first and second turns, while advancing key support and close combat units forward to get those objectives. You will often also contain units that are durable and hard to take out. Death Guard, Chaos Demons, Adeptosaur just come to mind here. So you can see some revolving themes. Speed, durability, and the ability to kill your opponent. Well, I'm not going to go into specific unit choices in this video. It's just going to be important to understand what is good and what isn't when you're selecting your forces. Every unit in your list needs to have a role that it plays. How aggressive our chapter tactic is, we need to ensure that we are making those efficient choices that synergize well with our overall theme. When I'm building a list and looking at a unit, I select them with the 3 tenets above. Each of those units need to have some form of durability attached to them, whether it's an invulnerable save, higher than normal toughness, or maybe damage reduction, as in the case of Duty Eternal. Obviously, this is not an all-inclusive list, and it's impossible to have something that is 100% durable, but it has to have something that potentially reduces the incoming damage to that unit or another unit. Failing that unit needs to be cheap or extremely points efficient. That is the only way you can validate taking something that is easy prey for your opponent. Then you need to consider how that unit does damage to your opponent. Is it in the shooting phase? Is it in the assault phase? How quickly can that unit reach your opponent or get them in range of your guns? Does it need buffs to be successful? Ideally, you want to have your guns going no later than the second turn after you move them in position, and hopefully they're sitting on an objective. How quickly can your close combat units make it into assault? With the Black Templars chapter tactics and stratagems, we're quicker than other chapters, but you still need to ensure that those units have the movement speed to earn their place in your list. But if they can't do it on their own, will a character with frontline commander make them work? Those are things that you need to think about. Will they do enough damage when they hit their targets? Synergy is key to a finesse army like the Black Templars. You should be getting into close combat no later than the second turn with our units on the 9th edition board sizes without the use of our stratagems. But you also need to make sure that those units do the job once they're in combat. So now that you know what traits to look for in a unit, how many do you need in an army? How should you configure your list? First, you need to remember that you're not playing to kill your opponent. That is simply a side effect of going after the primary and secondary mission objectives. Those are all important. I cannot stress that enough. 9th edition is all about the objectives. Now, in an average game, you are looking at between 4 and 6 objectives on the board. That means you will usually have 2 objectives in or near your deployment zone and 2 to 4 more midfield or in your opponent's deployment zone. Therefore, you know that you need to be aggressive with approximately 2/3 of your list leaving your deployment zone. A good list will have at least 2 units that you can leave in your deployment zone to capture and hold your home objectives. Hopefully, they will be able to participate from those ranges either by using actions or maybe long-range firepower. These do not necessarily need to be objective secure units, as if you build your list right and your aggressive units will distract your opponent from being able to advance into your deployment zone to take them from you. The more aggressive part of your list should ideally be in 2 tiers. The forward advancing part that takes the battle to your opponent, usually the toughest close combat units you have. These guys are going to be responsible for taking and holding your opponent's objectives, usually by killing whatever your opponent had on them or smashing through their lines to get there. The second tier is the midfield units. These are the units that perform best in the center of the board with approximately 24-inch range guns or excellent in a counter-assault role. These guys control the midfield objectives and or control the path to your deployment zone. They can also fulfill supporting roles to your advanced units if needed. An example of a traditional midfield unit would be the Redemptor Dreadnought or possibly the Eradicators. Now, this final part is going to be subjective, but I feel the best setup for a list is going to be to have at least 3 dedicated shooting units that can take down a vehicle or a monster or significant damage to an infantry unit in a single turn of shooting. Eradicators, multi-melta attack bites, plasma interceptors are great examples here. You can also take some support firepower like suppressors or whirlwinds in addition to those 3 units, but you're also taking them for their abilities and stratagems, not their kill power. I don't think it's a safe bet to take any less than 3 dedicated close combat units either. This will give you the ability to push forward into your opponent's side of the board and threaten them from multiple angles, or still have a close combat presence if you've lost some units to your opponent. Finally, do not give up Assassinate to your opponent by taking more than 4 characters in a list. You should be doing everything you can to minimize the secondaries you give up. You should also be able to get everything you want in the list with 3 to 4 characters, and any more than that is really pushing it. So thank you for watching today. I just want to give a little bit of a tidbit on some of the philosophies that I use when I build my lists, and hopefully they're helpful for you. If you have any questions or comments about my list building philosophies for the Black Templars, just comment below. If you'd like to see more competitive Black Templars videos, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified when we post videos. We also have a Discord, which you can find in the description, as well as a Patreon if you would love to support us. We appreciate all of our Patreon members. We couldn't do it without you. Thank you to all of our viewers. Your support has been great. So until next time.